We do have a rain warning in place. The rain will continue to make its way slowly and steadily northeastwards across the UK through the course of today. So some pretty heavy bursts of rain through this afternoon across southern western parts of Scotland and northern England. And here, after quite a cold start, feeling fairly chilly through this afternoon. Further south, though, 13 or 14 degrees, but actually turning quite windy as we go into this afternoon with some coastal gales across southwestern parts of England. But across more northern parts of Scotland, after a dry start, the rain will arrive through this evening as well. Some particularly heavy rain coming into the central lowlands and the Lothians as well as we go towards the evening. But tending to turn a little bit drier across parts of Northern Ireland, so some clear spells developing here, and actually turning much drier across the vast majority of England and Wales by this evening with some clear spells, and staying mild and breezy as we go through the course of tonight. There will be a tendency for the showers to increase, so potentially a band of heavier and more general rain pushing its way in from the west into parts of Wales and western England as we go through the course of the night. Perhaps even the odd rumble of thunder and some hail mixed in with this, and some quite squally winds too. But it will be a mild night, temperatures actually not falling below double figures in the south, and even further north, lows of 5 or 6 degrees, so generally speaking a frost-free night to come. Now, Monday will be much brighter compared to on Sunday. There'll be some sunny spells for many parts of the UK, perhaps some longer spells of rain for parts of Scotland for a time. And there will be a scattering of showers elsewhere, but primarily in the north and the west, and actually some areas, mainly in the east, will stay largely dry. It will start to turn a little bit cloudy in the south later in the day, but temperatures are 13 or 14 degrees, so once again very mild.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Bowl.
They are under no illusion.
Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get us on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's very scary the way that it's heading. I think AI has so many fantastic opportunities, but that when you remove the human out of it, nasty things can happen. And I think young people are being attracted to it because it's 24 availability, there's no judgment, so there's no embarrassment, and they're getting instant responses. So when you're removing the human out of the room, things go wrong.
Is this because adults have pushed this through? We just saw Keir Starmer there on a lectern, one of the many occasions where he's wanging on about how fantastic AI is and it's going to be in all the schools, it's going to transform everything. There's never anybody in the room that puts their hand up and goes, hang on a minute, have you thought this through? Have you actually thought about the negative consequences of this? We don't do that when it comes to technology, do we? We just push it through, Colin.
We're literally just pushing it through. So I think on one hand, for having AI as a companion in a school, it's fantastic because then no child technically is getting left behind because it's like a personal tutor. But no one's putting in those guardrails to say, hang on a sec, when something goes wrong, how are we alerting someone? Who do we alert? And then what do we do about it? No one's actually asking those questions. And we're moving at such a fast pace. We are sprinting when really we should be walking.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just about teenagers relying on AI now. You'll be seeing it, Colin. I mean, you're using. I have started to use it. I'm not denying it. I'm not a complete Luddite. I will go on if I want to come up with something creative, rather than starting with a blank page. I will go on to one of the AI sites and just ask some questions. And sometimes it just kicks you off with your creativity, or gives you some ideas which you can. But I am watching adults as well.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No, because you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
All too often, people will be sitting at home watching a press conference live, and they'll hear loads of questions being asked, and they'll be thinking, that's not my question, that's not my concern.
We don't care whose feathers we ruffle. We ask the questions that you want answering.
You're all standing on the street protesting and want to have an open discussion.
My name's Patrick Christys. I do a show for GB News in the UK. Is it possible to talk to you quickly?
Journalism in this country has been a cosy world full of groupthink until now.
Well, this is the best view ever of Whitehall, looking out across all the tractor drivers of England who've come together to make their point.
Hello, so as you can see, I'm here in Westminster as the protest begins.
Yes, I'm very much in the thick of it.
Look, we're challenging narratives here at GB News, and that's what sets us apart.
Good morning and welcome to the Camilla Tominey Show on GB News. Another busy week in Westminster as the fallout from Rachel Reeves's budget continues. Can the government really claim that they're getting a grip on welfare spending? Work and Pensions Secretary Pat McFadden will join me as Sir Keir Starmer's approval rating plummets to another historic low. Does he think a Wes Streeting and Angela Rayner partnership is the way to get Labour back on track? Heaven forbid. I'll also be speaking to Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary Helen Whately as the Conservatives unveil their plans to shake up eligibility to the Motability scheme. But do their welfare reforms go far enough? The chair of UK Hospitality, Kate Nichols, will be here to discuss the impact Rachel Reeves's budget will have on the sector, with a stark warning that the firms will see business rates rise by $300 million over the next 3 years. It's having a huge impact on pubs and restaurants. Baroness Faulkner has accused the Labour Party of abandoning women's rights this week, especially in relation to single-sex spaces and grooming gangs. Olympian and broadcaster Sharon Davies will outline where the Supreme Court judgment has really got us. And as Zelensky is set to be in London tomorrow to meet with the Prime Minister, former Conservative MP and author of The New Total War, Bob Seeley, will join me to share why he thinks Russia's war with Ukraine is a template for conflict of this century. Another 90 minutes of punchy politics to come, so do not even think of going anywhere. But first, joining me to review the Sunday front pages is my colleague at The Telegraph, senior political commentator Annabel Denham. It's a Telegraph double act here, Annabel, as we prepare to go off after this and answer the phones for the Telegraph Christmas phone-in. So do have a look on our socials because the number's there if you want to donate a little later and speak to either of us. But first of all, let's get stuck in then with our Sunday paper, reporting that Labour's biggest union backer is eyeing a split from the party over anger at Starmer. So this is Unite saying what? That they might no longer back the Labour Party?
That's the suggestion, at least, coming from Sharon Graham, their reasonably new leader, that they want to disaffiliate from the Labour Party. So disillusioned are they with the Starmer administration? I think it can really be broken down into three areas. They're very concerned about net zero zealotry and the impact that that's going to have on jobs and on the wages of their members. They are angry that the budget didn't slap higher taxes on the wealthy. They feel as though the poorest in society, those who are on lower wages, are hard done by as a consequence of this budget. Yes. And they're also very concerned about the watering down of the Employment Rights Bill. Now, this was the news last week that Labour wouldn't be pressing ahead with day one rights for workers. So you couldn't just start on a new job, leave for whatever reason because your employer didn't think that you were up to it, and then sue them for unfair dismissal. That's the really crucial point. Now,
I mean, businesses were breathing a sigh of relief, but obviously the unions don't like it at all because it's all a case of up the worker. But I think it's quite damaging for Starmer's reputation if Unite, of all unions, thinks that this isn't the party of the workers.
But it's been quite obvious for some time that Labour aren't the party of working people, however much they may claim to be.
Hang on, no, they're not taxing them, Annabel. This is the thing, you know, because their definition of a working person differs from anybody else in the country. Most people think that anyone who goes out to work, whatever they earn, is a working person, but apparently Rachel Reeves doesn't agree with that. This is also interesting time, and we've got this interview in The Observer, which I spoke about earlier, to breakfast. So it's a sort of soft soaping, aren't I a great dad and a great person type attempt by Keir Starmer. But he's saying in that interview that he'd quite happily welcome Angela Rayner back into the fold. And yet we've got briefings elsewhere in the rest of the media that actually Angela Rayner and Wes Streeting are cooking something up. What are they meant to be planning?
Well, suddenly she does look like the Kingmaker Supreme, doesn't she? Which is quite surprising, given the fact that she was forced to resign not so long ago. I always felt that she was better off inside the tent, more useful to Keir Starmer on his front bench than she was on the sidelines. Now it sounds like she and Wes Streeting are plotting, they're thinking ahead to the May elections, which everybody is expecting are going to be a calamity for Labour, that's so bad that it's going to prompt a leadership contest, and they are both jockeying for position. Now, Wes Streeting is being quite smart here. He will know that he is not the favourite among the membership, far from it, who will have the ultimate deciding vote on who the new leader and thus Prime Minister is. And he needs somebody like Angela Rayner, who is popular with the left of the party on side. He's also doing this in a way that he's able to distance himself. So it's those around Wes Streeting think what a spectacular leader he would be of the Labour Party. But he himself has not come out and said this, so he's avoiding repeating the mistakes of Andy Burnham from September this year.
Don't go too early. Although at the Labour conference, I think it was noteworthy that Wes Streeting was one of the first out of the traps to start celebrating the career of Angela Rayner in front of the conference floor. We even interviewed him afterwards for The Telegraph, and he was very keen to stress how supportive he was of the former Deputy Prime Minister, despite all of the trouble that she'd landed in over her Hove flat. The other thing that Keir Starmer said in that Observer interview, he's had a go at reform, and we'll put that aside because it's quite obvious that he would do so.
Par for the course.
Par for the course. But I thought it was interesting what he said about the Greens. They're anti-NATO and think it's right to sell drugs. That's nuts, he said. So it's interesting. He's got threats to the right of him, threats to the left of him. But for him to take on the Greens is significant, I think.
I think it just speaks to the enormous amount of pressure that he's under and the way that he's trying to triangulate between the threat from reform and now the rising threat from the Greens under their new charismatic leader, Zach Polansky. They've seen their membership absolutely soar. A lot of people are now getting out on the streets and supporting them. But if you look at some of their aspects of their manifesto, some of the ideas that they've come out with, it's difficult to disagree with Keir Starmer. It is nuts. We are talking about a party that wants open borders, that wants to legalise all drugs, not to mention their economic policy, and would be an absolute disaster for Britain. Now, what I would say is, whilst it does appear that there's a lot of momentum with the Green Party at the moment...
to be fair, I think there's probably a crossover between momentum and the Greens now, and even your party. There's a Venn diagram of socialism in this country that probably fits in both camps, but carry on.
I think that their policies are so extreme that their core vote will not be that high. It might be between 15 and 20%. That will translate into between 40 and 50 seats. But that could make a big difference to Keir Starmer, to the Labour Party at the next general election. I think that this is why they are beginning to talk about rejoining the customs union, because generally speaking, Green Party voters are fanatically pro-Remain. Younger voters are very pro-Remain. These are people who want to see us ultimately rejoining the EU, the customs union being a stepping stone towards that. But really, all of this speaks to Keir Starmer's awareness of how unpopular he is. But, as the Tory party has shown us repeatedly in recent years, a change of leader doesn't always change a party's fortunes.
No, it doesn't. And also, The Sun on Sunday, which I think is significant that it's that paper, is picking up on the welfare splurge. Now, you might imagine that Sun readers would be very supportive of scrapping of the two-child benefit cap. But they've crunched some numbers and they've made the point that actually what this welfare hike does is benefit migrant families. And this is where we distinguish Labour's scrapping of the cap with Nigel Farage's proposition, because Reform is saying they'll scrap it, but only in the case where both parents are working and they're British citizens. This idea that it will help 350,000 migrant families is not going to be going down well with some parts of Britain that just feel that people who come here, legally or illegally, are given an easy ride compared to those who go out and work for a living. And I'm not suggesting, by the way, that there aren't migrants who will get the benefit who are working, but there'll also be a lot that are on benefits already and aren't.
No, I think that's right. So we already know that around 70% of the British public actually support keeping the two-child benefit cap in place. They believe that those families that are out of work should face the same financial considerations as those who are in work. We also know that that sentiment is felt particularly strongly among traditional red wall Labour voters. So it's quite baffling that this policy has been announced even to begin with, not least given that it was something Keir Starmer only a year ago said that he wanted to keep in place, but it was very much a budget that was about shoring up support in the Parliamentary Labour Party, and the country came second, despite everything that Keir Starmer has said.
Worth remembering the Sun came out in support of Labour. I wonder where they're positioning themselves now.
Well, probably like a lot of the business owners who were wooed by Rachel Reeves' salmon offensive and have subsequently realised
the salmon offensive
that it's been extremely damaging. So I think there was already that feeling towards the decision to lift the two-child benefit cap, and that will only be exacerbated when people read how many migrant families are actually going to be benefiting from that. And the data are really quite stark. So we know that a third of births in Britain now are to non-UK born women. We know that the share of families with over 3 children, of the share of families with over 3 children, 14% are white British families, 41% are Pakistani families, and around 38% are Bangladeshi families. Now, it's not to say that they're not British, but it's a surprising mood when you consider the general sort of sense that people are feeling about the budget and the two-child benefit cap.
The other problem as well, Annabelle, is some of those incomes, because women who come from Pakistan and Bangladesh don't always work as much as women from other cultures. That then means that their households have less money, inevitably, because it's not a case of both parents working. We need to leave it there because Pat McFadden, the Work and Pensions Secretary, is waiting in the wings to speak to me after the break. Thank you, Annabelle Denham, and we'll see you. We'll be on the phones a little bit later with reindeer hats on and goodness knows what else. Now, in our You Decide poll for the show today, we're going to be asking you, would you trust the Tories to crack down on welfare spending more than Labour? You can vote by becoming a friend of GB News by scanning the QR code on the screen now. As I say, Pat McFadden is waiting to speak to you all, so I'll be questioning him after the break. This is the Camilla Tominey Show, only on GB News.
I hope we haven't forgotten anything.
Travel insurance, I ticked that box.
Yeah, but remember what you forgot last year.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there. It's still pretty unsettled in the eastern Mediterranean over the next few days. There will be some heavy showers and thunderstorms around too. But across Iberia and actually most of the Canary Islands and Madeira, it's largely fine, and there'll be plenty of sunshine on Monday. Just a few showers for northwestern parts of Spain and Portugal. Sunny for most of Italy too, but we run into more in the way of showers and stronger winds pushing down across parts of Greece and into Turkey. But overall, over the next few days, there's lots of sunshine to be enjoyed and it will feel fairly warm.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Joining me now is Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, Pat McFadden. Lovely to see you, Mr. McFadden. It's been a while. I don't think I've spoken to you since you've become the Work and Pensions Secretary. And I know you've got a big announcement today, £120 million to create 350,000 new workplace opportunities to help the young. However, you're going to help the young a bit more, aren't you, Mr. McFadden? Because youth unemployment has actually shot up under Labour, and some are warning it's about to get even worse because of the minimum wage. According to the Centre for Policy Studies, it's now £4,000 more expensive to employ someone aged 18 to 20.
So the rate of young people not in education, employment or training has been going up quite sharply for about 4 years now. The sharpest rise in it was actually before the election. And we need to respond to this because the last thing we want is young people living a life on benefits or not doing anything constructive. So we're coming forward with a package today which we call the Youth Guarantee. It's backed not by 100 million but by 800 million pounds of government investment, and that will offer training places to 300,000 or more of those young people, and ultimately for the long-term young unemployed who are still out of work after 18 months, then a subsidised job, because we want to see young people in the habit of doing the right thing, getting up in the morning, the discipline, the sense of pride and purpose that a job brings. And I think, to be honest, young people have been neglected. They haven't been offered enough help in the past, and we want to put that right with the Youth Guarantee package that we're announcing today.
All right, but isn't it true to say that youth unemployment is a problem, and there are many people who think putting up the minimum wage isn't going to solve it, it's actually going to make it worse, because it's now much more expensive for people to employ people at 18. You'd rather have somebody with a bit more wisdom and experience for the higher minimum wage.
Well, we do understand that for an employer, taking on someone is a risk. We recognise this in the tax system. Any employer who takes on someone under the age of 21 gets a tax break. They don't have to pay employers' national insurance on that. So that is recognised in the tax system as an incentive to take on young people. With regard to the minimum wage, you know, we're proud of the minimum wage. We think people should get a decent wage for turning up and going to work. It's set by the government, but on the recommendation of the Low Pay Commission, and governments of all colours have accepted the recommendations of the Low Pay Commission over the years. It's been a very successful model for the UK, and I don't think it's a good future for young people or for older people to say what we really believe is that your pay should be lower, because as your viewers will know, Camilla, people are finding it tough to pay the bills out there. To make ends meet, and so a decent return for your labour is something that you wouldn't be surprised to hear a Labour government strongly believes in.
Well, I think the GB News viewers and listeners are worried that people these days appear to be better off on benefits than in work. You're talking about getting younger people into work. Let's talk about the welfare bill, Pat McFadden, because it's actually a lie, isn't it, to suggest that you are in any way cutting welfare. Welfare's going to be going up by the course of this Parliament by 70 billion quid.
So the welfare bill went up 3 times quicker in the last Parliament under the Tories than it's
Let's talk
projected
about
to do
Labour, though.
under this Parliament. In terms of Labour, we have made the biggest change to universal credit for many years by passing legislation which narrows the gap between what you get for being declared unfit for work and what you get when you're fit for work. Under the Tory system that we inherited, that was a difference of double your money, so we've cut that in half by reducing that rate of extra payment for being long-term sick. And the reason we did that is because we do believe that incentives matter. So we took the system from the Tories, which was double your money. We've legislated to change that, so there is change happening in the system.
Yeah, but the Centre for Social Justice has put together a report that no doubt you'll be familiar with, which has crunched the numbers and shows that a family who is working with 3 children would have to earn £71,000 to compete with a family that isn't working but is claiming benefits. What possible incentive is there for people to work if you're actually better off on benefits?
Well, I did look at that example, and unfortunately it's a highly respected think tank, of course, but they didn't compare like with like because they allocated disability payments to the family out of work, but not to the family in work. And many disability payments stay with you whether you're in work or out. So the important thing in these comparisons is to compare like with like and not allocate extra benefits to the family out of work compared to the family in work. So
I did hear that it was challenged. I did hear that it was challenged and that the figure that everyone settled on. No. I did hear that it was challenged by the likes of the Resolution Foundation and the Joseph Rowntree, and it was accepted by all that if you did take account for that, that it would be £61,000, not 71. The point still remains. You're better off on benefits than you are working unless you earn over 61 grand in that particular setup.
But that's just, look, the universal credit system is designed to make sure you're always better in work. The previous system, people used to lose more or less pound for pound if they took up a job. There's now a taper that means you're better off on a sliding scale if you are taking up work. Oops, forgive me. And that's an important part of the system. Sorry, I'm having some earpiece problems, but we'll keep going.
No, I can see. Mr. McFadden, you have rescued the earpiece. Keep your finger in the ear just so you can continue to hear me. All right, I take your point on benefits. Do you accept the Sun on Sunday's research today that actually the scrapping of the 2-child benefit cap largely benefits migrant families because they're far more likely to have more than 2 children than British citizens or white families? I think it accounts for about 14% of white families have more than 2 children, 41% of Pakistani and Bangladeshi families have more than 2 children, and often the mothers in that family don't work. Those families might be better off if both parents worked.
Look, the problem with the examples quoted is they don't know how many of those people are British citizens at all. Many of them may have become British citizens over the years that they've been here, and many of them may be working because, again, universal credit is a benefit that applies to families both in and out of work, depending on how much they're earning. So again, I think there's a big problem with that because it doesn't take into account how many are British citizens. And there's another important aspect of this, which is that people who come here don't have access to the benefit system until they've been here for 5 years, and we're increasing that to 10 years because we do believe in the principle of contribution in the benefit system, as I'm sure a lot of your viewers do too.
All right, let's have a quick chat about the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves. So we now know that she lied in her CV. There's claims that she lied in the budget. She wasn't ever the under-14s chess champion. She actually came 24th out of 36. So why is she still in post when she's got this quite difficult relationship, seemingly, Pat McFadden, with the truth?
She's in post because she's an excellent chancellor who's put the country's finances on a stable footing. She's getting more investment into the country, and she's helping people with the cost of living. That's why she's in post.
Well, she's taxing people by the tune of £26 billion more, having insisted that she wouldn't put taxes up on working people. I hope you're not going to say to me, Pat McFadden, with all of your wealth of political experience, that you're not taxing working people, because you clearly are, and it's largely to go towards paying people who aren't working benefits, isn't it?
No, it's not. I mean, all the taxation in the country comes together for the things that we need, and we had to turn the corner on the NHS, which we're doing with waiting lists down for the first time in years. We had to keep up the investment in the transport system, in building new houses. There are things to be done in the country. We've got to increase defence expenditure because of the situation in Europe. So taxation goes to all those things right across the board.
If the Chancellor and the Prime Minister are doing such a great job, why are they now historically unpopular as far as the electorate's concerned? The Prime Minister's approval rating is tanking. Rachel Reeves is the least popular Chancellor in history, and I'm including Kwasi Kwarteng in that.
Well, look, let's talk about that in a few years' time. In the moment, I don't mind.
Well, can we talk about it now?
The polls are the way they are, as long as we're doing the right thing. And we are doing the right thing with some of the things that we've been discussing. We want to help people with the cost of living. They're going to see £150 cut in their energy bills. They're going to see rail fares frozen. They're going to see an increase in the minimum wage, as we spoke about a few moments ago, because we understand that the cost of living is hurting people. And we need to turn around our NHS, which the whole country relies on. So governments are elected to make the decisions. They're not always popular at the time. The time to judge the government is when the next election comes.
All right, Pat McFadden, thank you very much indeed for that. Final, very quick question, because we're running out of time.
My pleasure.
Have you postponed those mayoral elections because you're doing so badly in the south of England, down to 14%? Just very quickly.
No, I'd quite like them so we could see what different parties are like when they're in power. It's a good test, and some people thought they could do it, and they're finding it a bit harder than they thought.
All right, Mr. McFadden, we look forward to you pushing for those elections to take place. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for bearing with the earpiece. Coming up next, we're going to get Helen Whately's reaction to what the Work and Pension Secretary has said there. Helen Whately is the shadow Work and Pension Secretary, and they've got a plan, the Tories, to scrap the Motability scheme for people suffering with conditions like ADHD. Stay tuned for that. This is the Camilla Tominey Show, only on GB News.
We want to make the new year your best year yet, with a chance to win our greatest cash prize to date. A simply stunning £85,000 in tax-free cash could be yours. Treat the family to that bucket list holiday you've always fancied. Get your dream car you've always wanted. Or just relax, safe in the knowledge that the coming year is on us. For another chance to win £85,000 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
There's a lot of tables out there that won't just have turkey on it. There'll be turkey and ham, and but I know some people that will cook 3 or 4 different meats. And obviously the joy of having turkey is that you can then make a turkey curry for Boxing Day and the subsequent days. So, you know, you should be having days of curry after your turkey lunch. I think for the masses, it's still hugely popular. You know, through the festive period at the Dog, we will have hundreds of people having Christmas parties, and most of them will order our turkey lunch or dinner. And then Christmas Day, we could sell it probably 3 or 4 times. The demand for people to go out for the traditional turkey roast is still massive. But hey, look, if you don't like a roast lunch, then why force yourself to have it on the, you know, probably one of the most important meals of the day in terms of bringing family together.
What about Sophie's point, Mark, about cost and spending £30, £40 on turkey? That is simply too expensive for lots of people.
Yeah, I'll never be able to defend or debate that. You know, I know more than anyone the challenges around food inflation, and a good turkey has become a huge cost. But I still think where people can afford the tradition, the joy of coming together, sharing a big turkey roast meal it's a brilliant Christmas tradition. But yeah, the food inflation, that's something we've talked about a number of times, isn't it? You know, it's crippling our business and it's crippling people at homes. I suppose the key thing to look at is if you know what you're doing with it, a good turkey will feed the family for many days. It's not just one meal.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to the Camilla Tominey Show on GB News. Lots more still to come this morning. Shadow Work and Pension Secretary Helen Whately will be here as the Conservatives unveil their plans to shake up eligibility to the Motability Scheme. But will their welfare reforms go far enough? The Chair of UK Hospitality, Kate Nichols, will be here to discuss the impact Rachel Rees's budget will have on the sector, with a stark warning that firms will see business rates rise by more than £300 million over the next 3 years. Baroness Faulkner has accused the Labour Party of abandoning women's rights this week, especially in relation to single-sex spaces and grooming gangs. Olympian and broadcaster Sharon Davies will outline where the Supreme Court judgment has really got us. And as Zelensky is sent to be in London tomorrow, former Conservative MP and author of The New Total War, Bob Seeley, will join me to share why he thinks Russia's war with Ukraine is a template for conflict in this century. But first, here's your latest news headlines with Bethany Elsey.
Camilla, thank you. Good morning. I'm Bethany Elsey with your top stories at 10:01, and we'll start with some breaking news. Armed police have responded to an incident at Heathrow Airport's Terminal 3 multi-storey car park. Pictures shared on social media show police, ambulance and fire service vehicles outside Terminal 2 and 3. Heathrow is warning passengers of delays as a result, and National Rail says there'll be disruption to services from the airport until around midday. This is, of course, a developing story. We'll bring you the latest as and when we get it. Thousands of guaranteed jobs in construction and hospitality are to be offered to young people on benefits in the spring. It's part of an £800 million government plan to tackle youth unemployment, which includes funding for training and work experience. It comes amid a rise in so-called NEETs, that's 16 to 24-year-olds not in employment, education or training. That number now stands at 940,000. The Prime Minister says his former deputy, Angela Rayner, will return to his cabinet. Miss Rayner resigned in September after she was found to have underpaid stamp duty on a seaside flat. In an interview with The Observer, Sir Keir Starmer said he missed her and that misogyny had played a part in the level of criticism she faced. But the Conservative leader, Camilla Tominey, argues Rayner's return should be on the condition that she pays back the £40,000 of property taxes that she avoided. In the same interview, the Prime Minister expressed concern over what will happen if Reform UK win the next election, claiming they will tear British communities apart. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage has launched a legal challenge over the government's decision to delay the mayoral elections in May. It comes after an announcement that more than 5 million people across the south and east of England will be denied a vote in their areas as a result. The government blames the delay on local authorities needing more time to merge as part of a devolution drive. And thousands of Father Christmases are working off those milk and cookies in the country's biggest ever festive fun run. Around 11,000 people have signed up to the annual Santa Dash in Liverpool, and GB News reporter Doogie Beattie joins us from there now. Doogie, how are you getting on? Have you been quick enough to race them to the end?
What what an atmosphere here in Liverpool. This is festive fun, took it to the extremes. Over 11,000 Santas from right across the British Isles taking part. It was a blue that won it. That'll annoy the Reds, but he won it, followed up by the Grinch. But Liverpool is basically having the festive time of the year. 11,100 runners raising money for charity, and this is actually some of the slower ones crossing that line. The whole city at this time of the morning is absolutely festive cheer everywhere we go, Christmas music and even some snow.
GB News reporter Dougie Beattie, thank you so much for joining us. Now let's get back to Camilla.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are, online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Thanks for that, Bethany. Joining me now is the Shadow Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, Helen Whately. Lovely to see you this morning, Miss Whately. I'm going to get onto your Motability changes in just a minute. But before we do that, you've lost Christopher Harborne's dosh. He's decided to give £9 million to reform. And now you've got Lord Offord, having defected in Scotland, accusing the party of having given up on politics north of Hadrian's Wall. What's going on?
Well, I completely disagree with that criticism. In fact, we've been leading the fight for the sake of the UK's oil and gas sector, which is particularly based in Aberdeen, out of Scotland. And our Shadow Secretary of State for Scotland, Andrew Barry, has been working with Kemi Badenoch on exactly that, and actually getting the government to review their taxation, the way that they're taxing that sector so heavily. So we are working hard for Scotland. I'm disappointed to see anyone leave the Conservative Party, but the fact is, the Conservative Party and Reform are different. The Conservative Party is working hard on making sure we have the right offer to the country for the next general election. We've set out how we will cut public spending and how that will enable us to cut people's taxes and boost the economy and have a stronger, better economy, growing economy for a better future for the country. So that's what we're working on. That's my focus.
I know, but it's not really a show of confidence in Kemi Badenoch's leadership, is it? We've got the Harborne donation, we've got the Lord Offord defection, we had Jonathan Gullis and two others also defecting to Reform. I mean, what are the Tories and Kemi Badenoch doing wrong? Why can't you hold on to these people?
Well, actually, what we know is that Reform is trying to cause trouble for us, and they tend to announce somebody's defection, often long after it might have actually happened, at a time when Kemi Badenoch is doing well and has gained some momentum. And she got lots of praise for her scrutiny of Rachel Reeves and that dreadful budget we saw a couple of weeks ago. And so not surprising, Nigel Farage will choose to announce a defection to try and derail her. But that's not going to happen. So Kemi Badenoch knows what she's doing and why she's doing it. She's driven by her principles and her conviction. She's got a strong team in the Shadow Cabinet around her, and we're getting on with our job for holding the government to account and making sure we have the right plan for the country at the next election.
Well, let's talk about your Motability plan. What are you trying to change about that scheme, which we read this week accounts for, I think it's a third of all car sales in Wales?
Well, exactly that. We've been looking into some of the data, as I said, doing the job of the opposition. And we've seen that around a third of new cars in Wales are Motability cars. Around a quarter of new cars sold in London and the North East are Motability cars, which just gives you a sense of the scale of what's gone wrong with this scheme. It cost the country about £3 billion last year. It's gone up 10% last year under the government, yet Labour are doing next to nothing to tackle this problem. We're saying this is what you should do, not only stop some of the tax breaks on Motability cars, but also stop people getting cars who don't need them. Particularly, you shouldn't be getting cars, we've seen examples of things like acne, tennis elbow, ADHD, things like that. That is not what the scheme is for. And this is so, and people feel angry about this, how unfair it is. You have people who've just seen their taxes go up in the budget, people who can't necessarily even afford a car themselves, paying for somebody who lives in their street to have a new car. This is unfair and it should be fixed.
If you want to scrap Motability cars for people, as you say, with conditions like ADHD, mild depression, and in some cases acne, what about PIP payments to those people, Helen Whately?
Well, yes, the two things are connected. So we've said that we will reform those PIP payments, sickness benefit system, and that you shouldn't get sickness benefits, you shouldn't get PIP for those reasons, and that's how you then get the mobility part of PIP, which gives you the access to the cars. So the two things are connected. But one of the things that we're specifically setting out today is we did try and do a reform on this back in 2017, and actually got thrown out by the courts on the grounds of the European Convention on Human Rights. We have announced under Kemi Badenoch's leadership that we would leave the European Convention on Human Rights, and that would mean that wouldn't get in the way of us being able to do this, to make this really important change as part of the overall reform we want to do to fix that sickness benefit system, which is so broken.
The trouble is, though, the Tories are pledging to try and bring the welfare bill down by 23 billion. OK, there can be an argument about the fact that it did go up under your watch as well as under Labour. The actual welfare bill is due to go up, if you exclude pensions, by 22 billion in benefits alone. So really, all you're going to be doing by scrapping 23 billion pounds worth of benefits is just restoring it still to that post-pandemic level. You're not going far enough. If the benefits bill is due to hit 406 billion by the end of this Parliament, you're going to have to cut much, much more than 23 billion. You're not being ambitious enough.
Well, do not underestimate my ambition and determination to fix this system. But what we've also said is we're not going to set out things that we don't have a properly thought through plan for. So that's why when at party conference we announced the 23 billion savings, that's because we've had the opportunity to do the hard work on how we would do that, setting out, as I said, some of those reforms to the PIP system, also stopping benefits going to foreign nationals with indefinite leave to remain, limited leave to remain. There are more things that we included in that and we know we need to do. And actually I'm doing a very substantial piece of work on how we fix what is a very broken system. But we don't want to announce plans when we haven't done the proper work to be able to do that. Because I think that people don't want politicians making promises that they won't be able to keep. We're seeing Labour saying again, they're talking up whether they're going to reform welfare. Keir Starmer said he's going to reform welfare. Pat McFadden said he's going to reform welfare, but they don't do it. People want to know that politicians will actually keep their word, and that's a hard work that we're doing as a party.
Helen Whately, you may be in a glass house there throwing stones. The Conservatives were renowned for making promises they couldn't keep, not just on welfare, but on tax and immigration. But just moving on from that, we've now got the head of Wellington College, a man called James Dahl, coming out this morning saying that he thinks that children are being overdiagnosed with conditions like ADHD, saying that they're being medicalised for what are, quotes, bumps in the road of growing up. Richard Tice, the Deputy Reform UK leader, came out with a similar statement that he felt that there was an overdiagnosis going on, that parents were gaming the system. What do you think?
Well, I just pick up briefly on what you said before. As I said, Camilla, I completely recognise mistakes that we made in government. We brought down the benefits bill and then it started going up with these increased claims on sickness benefits. We identified a set of reforms which the government cancelled, the Labour government cancelled the moment they came into power. And I am setting out the things we would do to fix that as soon as we get the next opportunity. Or indeed, hopefully the government will pick up on some of our ideas and put them into practice sooner rather than later, because the sooner this can be fixed, the better for everyone. On your point about the overdiagnosis of mental health, and this is something I've talked about. I came into Parliament actually campaigning for better care for serious mental illness, things like schizophrenia, psychosis, which the NHS hasn't been historically very good at doing. But one of the things that has happened is we've rightly reduced the stigma about talking about mental health, as we have had a lot more people getting diagnoses for things which are more like the ups and downs of daily life. For instance, being anxiety being given as a reason to be not going to work to claim sickness benefits. This simply isn't the right thing for our country. It's not the right thing for those individuals who I've seen, people being given sick notes, signed off work, when actually they'd be better off in work. If work is stressful, let's support people to cope with that, rather than signed off sick, nor can we afford it.
All right, I know you and Reform don't always see eye to eye, but I would assume, as good Democrats, so to speak, that the Conservatives will be supporting Nigel Farage in his legal challenge against Labour for postponing these mayoral elections in May.
Well, James Cleverly, our Secretary of State, and Kemi Badenoch, our Shadow Secretary of State for Communities, Local Government, and Kemi Badenoch have both said that we think the government was wrong to cancel these elections. They shouldn't be denying democracy. So we've been quite clear that we disagree with the government on this.
I know, but as the opposition party, you should be throwing your weight behind any legal challenge. This is an assault on democracy. Voters will argue this is shutting 5 million people out from having their say in those areas of the south of England.
Well, I'm not going to sort of jump on Nigel Farage bandwagon and say I'm a Conservative MP, not a member of Reform. And I'm supporting Kemi Badenoch as my leader, holding the government to account. Nigel Farage, I'm sure, will do things his own way.
All right. Helen Whately, thank you very much indeed for joining me this morning. Great to see you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed, by the way, the light show that was going on behind me. If you're watching on the telly, if you're listening, you didn't see it, but sometimes we like to have a few disco vibes here at GB News just to get you in the Christmas spirit. Anyway, coming up next, we're going to be speaking to the Olympian and broadcaster Sharon Davies. She's going to be commenting on Baroness Faulkner claiming that Labour has got a giant woman problem. Stay tuned.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Bold. They are under no illusion.
Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get us on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What we're going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Before we speak to Sharon Davies, we'll just get a brief update on some breaking news this morning. A man has been arrested on suspicion of assault after several people were attacked with a form of pepper spray by a group of men at a multi-storey car park at Heathrow Airport Terminal 3, the Met Police has said. GB News' national reporter Will Godley joins us now. Will, what's gone on?
Heathrow, Britain's busiest airport, of course, and very worrying scenes there as emergency services seen there throughout the morning. I can tell you the Metropolitan Police have just released a statement in the last few moments where they said they were called to the scene at Heathrow Airport at 11 minutes past 8 this morning after reports of multiple people being assaulted at a multi-storey car park at Terminal 3. Metropolitan Police went on to say a number of people were sprayed with what is believed to be a form of pepper spray by a group of men who then left the scene. And that tallies reports from what we were seeing on social media, people complaining about feeling like they were coughing and unable to breathe in the car park. Bus drivers, they're told to stay in their vehicles and lots of emergency services there on the scene. Well, one person has been arrested by armed police there this morning. He remains in custody at this time, and police officers at the moment continuing their inquiries to trace further suspects. Also given an update on those people who were victims in this assault. The London Ambulance Service took a number of people to hospital. Their injuries not believed to be life-threatening or life-changing at this stage, so some good news on that front as well. The area as well, anyone travelling to Heathrow, remains open, but there is disruption in place after earlier closures on the railways and also roads in the surrounding areas, and police also ruling out this incident as terrorism. They've said Commander Pete Stevens, who's leading this investigation, has said, "We are not treating this incident, Camilla, as terrorism." He understands the public's concerns and would like to thank those in the area for their cooperation this morning as they continue their investigation, as one person has been arrested.
All right, thank you very much indeed for that, Will. It's a relief, isn't it? Because you see stories about airports being shut down and you automatically fear the very worst. But good to hear that nobody has been really very seriously injured. Right, a little bit of a change of tack now, because we're going to speak to Sharon Davies, the Olympian and broadcaster, about Labour, Sharon, and whether it might have a woman problem. Now, the former head of the Equality and Human Rights Commission, a lady called Baroness Faulkner, has suggested that the Labour Party has both abandoned women and feminism. I mean, it's quite the claim, isn't it, Sharon? Lovely to see you this morning. Do you think she's right? She's talking about a sort of support for trans rights against single-sex spaces, but she's also talking about the grooming gangs and the lack of inquiry and then the calling of an inquiry, but then the inquiry itself has courted a degree of controversy after a number of survivors abandoned the process. Do you think she's right?
Yes, I do. I mean, obviously, I speak very much, for sport and for the fact that we've been allowing men to compete in women's sport now for a very long time. But for the last 10 years, I've been talking about it. I think Baroness Faulkner is a very clever lady. I mean, I think what she's done with the guidance is she's interpreted the law. And the problem is that there's a number of backbenchers and trans activists inside the Labour Party that don't like the law. So even though the law is the law and the law has always been the law, it's been misrepresented. The Equality Act of 2010 has been misrepresented by particular individuals like gendered intelligence, Stonewall. I know this from sport. I know what they were given. It was Stonewall's version of the law, not the actual law. And unfortunately, no risk assessments were ever done at the beginning of that process. No one said, look, what is going to happen to women's sport or women's private spaces or women's prisons if we allow biological males to go into them. And yet we're talking about doing a risk assessment now about the cost to industry to take them out. I mean, the whole thing is a bit bizarre, really. You cannot protect something if you can't define it. And really what the Supreme Court did very, very clearly in April was to say that sex, whenever we talk about it, means biological sex. And that is really important. Otherwise women have no rights whatsoever. If anyone can identify into our sex, we have no rights anymore. And sadly, it isn't just the Labour Party. It's the Lib Dems, it's the Greens, it's certainly the SNP. Given their way, they would have self-identification.
Yes. And it's interesting, isn't it? You mentioned the Supreme Court ruling, which was back in April. That's 8 months on. We had the Women's Institute come out this week and say we are no longer going to admit trans women because of that ruling. And yet other organisations and institutions, Sharon, seem to be dragging their feet. Let's first of all talk about sport. Where are we with trans women competing in women's sport now?
So we still have 34 sports, would you believe, in this country that allow men to identify into women's sport. And it tends not to affect the elite because we've managed to pressurise them into protecting the elite, which is literally 1%. These are the very, very top of our sports. So the pathways, the juniors, the recreational, they're still not protected. And where do we get our elite from if they don't come through, from the pathways? We just heard table tennis yesterday have decided that they will stop men from competing in women's sport, but they're not doing it until August of next year. Why August of next year when the law is what the law is right now? So, my advice to you, if you're a table tennis player and you're being made to play against a male and you're a female, demand that they apply the law right now. I set up the Women's Sports Union with Tracy Edwards of Maiden fame, and our intention is very much to try and hold the feet of the the CEOs of all these governing bodies to the fire to say you must now protect your female athletes. All female athletes are worthy of protection, not just that 1%. So that is where we are.
That's a very interesting point, actually, because, of course, we've heard from the Olympic Committee and others. The other thing is, the clue is in the name Supreme Court. That's the judgment. They've had 8 months now to decide how to play this. It's very, very clear. It's defining trans women as men, basically, and saying biological sex must reign supreme. Then you look at other organisations, for instance, the NHS. I don't want to go into the details of Jennifer Melly's case because it's about to be heard and it would require us to read a lot of different rights of reply. But in general, we've had the NHS dragging their feet on this. Still seemingly waiting for guidance to make guidance up.
And the Sandy Peggy case as well, exactly the same. And what's frustrating is that women are having to crowdfund to raise the money to fight national bodies like the NHS who are using the taxpayers' money to fight to break the law. This is the most ridiculous situation ever, that women, can't get our government to stand up and apply the law. So, we are, one at a time, we are trying to take these organisations on, the Women's Institute, the Girl Guiding. That was brought by individual women and by parents of young girls to say, we need you to protect this organisation, which is charitable status, to be for young girls. And then we've got the people who own these organisations who run them apologising for the fact that they're protecting young girls. It is a ludicrous state of affairs that we've got ourselves into. And the government needs to step up. Bridget Phillipson has had this guidance on her desk now for 3 months. And I have seen it because obviously we know the Times leaked that a few weeks ago. And it categorically says that sport must be run by biological sex. And any sport that's not doing that is actually guilty of indirect sex discrimination. So be wary, because in the new year, Tracy and I will be coming for you, individual sports. We really will.
I wouldn't want you coming for me, Sharon, honestly. I think the organisations and indeed the government will defend themselves by saying, look, they're taking legal advice. And as you and I both know, that can take some time, not least if lawyers are charging by the hour. Let's just move on to another controversial topic that's reared its head again this week. And that's this puberty blocker trial. Now, we had a situation where the Cass report came out. Let's just use the precise language that she used, that there was not enough evidence to support the safety or clinical effectiveness of puberty blockers being prescribed to children who wanted to transition to the opposite sex. We now have this trial being carried out by the NHS and King's College London. Hannah Barnes, who wrote a very interesting book about what went on with the gender identity services at Tavistock, has raised concerns about this. What are your feelings?
Well, my feeling right now is that Wes Streeting must own this. If he's going to allow this trial, to go ahead with 200, new young children that are going to be experimented on, when we have over 2,000 that have gone through the Tavistock, what's weird about that is they've lost the ongoing results. Well, why aren't we finding what happened to these young people long term? Why do we need to experiment on more young people? Puberty is not an illness. Treating puberty as if we can just stop it and then come back to it or drop it or pretend we don't need it is utterly ridiculous. And young children are not allowed to drink, drive a car, have a tattoo because they're not old enough to make these decisions. How they can then be old enough to say that they're happy to be potentially sterilised and be medicalised for the rest of their life is quite extraordinary. We should not be, blocking children's puberty, and we should use the evidence that we have, not start experimenting all over again.
And the counter-narrative to that, Sharon, being that a child is so unhappy, they feel that they're in the wrong body, they want to transition to the opposite sex. The only way that they can do that is to stop puberty, to ensure, in the case of a female, that they don't grow breasts and all the rest of it. You know, there have been cases where these children have claimed to be suicidal. And if you stop treating that, then you could be jeopardising children in the opposite direction. What's your response to that?
I would say that we need to give these young children a great deal of support and cognitive help. You know, the statistics will show us actually the suicide rates post-transgenderism is higher. So again, it's really important that we deal with facts, not feelings. And the facts tell us that it doesn't fix their mental health problems, their anxiety problems, and they're massively overrepresented with children that have been sexually abused or autistic or come from care homes. 4 times as many children identify as trans that come from care homes. Why are not TV programs doing shows about that? Why are they not doing investigative journalism about why that is the case? Why do some schools have 25% of their kids identify and other schools has none? You know, there is a huge gender social contagion that goes with this cult almost, and young people should not be told that they can magically change sex, because that is not the case. They will never be able to change their biological sex, ever.
All right. Sharon Davies, thank you once again for coming on the show and also for speaking so clearly. I know you feel very passionately about this. Good to see you on a Sunday morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
I must say that a Labour source has responded to Baroness Faulkner's claim about Labour effectively having a woman problem and said this: after more than a decade of women and girls being badly let down, it's this Labour government that is delivering a comprehensive strategy to tackle violence against them, delivering on their priorities and ensuring women have the opportunity, more opportunity rather, to lead the lives they choose. A government spokesman said, "We are unapologetic about taking the time to produce legally sound guidance that will guide businesses and organisations and ensure that they have the safety and dignity they deserve. The alternative, issuing rushed and flawed guidance, would be utterly catastrophic and fail women across our country." And just on that puberty blockers trial, a spokesman for the Health Department said, "We are following the CAS review, which was clear that the evidence on care for these children is lacking, and proposed this research to help provide it. Medical care must always be based on solid evidence, and children's safety must come first." Well, coming up next, we're going to be speaking about the effect of Rachel Reeves's budget. Rachel Reeves, just earlier described by Pat McFadden as a great chancellor, by the way. Make of that what you will. We're going to be speaking to the chair of UK Hospitality, Kate Nichols. She's going to tell me whether she agrees with Mr McFadden's assessment of the chancellor. Don't go anywhere.
Good morning and welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. We've got further wet and windy weather on the way through today, but it will be turning much milder once again in the south. And it's a damp start to the day for many of us. Outbreaks of rain and drizzle across more southern parts of England and Wales, and the rain's especially heavy across parts of Northern Ireland today, where we do have a rain warning in place. The rain will continue to make its way slowly and steadily northeastwards across the UK through the course of today, so some pretty heavy bursts of rain through this afternoon across southern western parts of Scotland and northern England. And here, after quite a cold start, feeling fairly chilly through this afternoon. Further south, though, 13 or 14 degrees, but actually turning quite windy as we go into this afternoon, with some coastal gales across southwestern parts of England. But across more northern parts of Scotland, after a dry start, the rain will arrive through this evening as well. Some particularly heavy rain coming into the central lowlands and the Lothians as well as we go towards the evening. But turning to turn a little bit drier across parts of Northern Ireland, so some clear spells developing here, and actually turning much drier across the vast majority of England and Wales by this evening, with some clear spells, and staying mild and breezy as we go through the course of tonight. There will be a tendency for the showers to increase, so potentially a band of heavier and more general rain pushing its way in from the west into parts of Wales and western England as we go through the course of the night. Perhaps even the odd rumble of thunder and some hail mixed in with this, and some quite squally winds too. But it will be a mild night, temperatures actually not falling below double figures in the south, and even further north, lows of 5 or 6 degrees, so generally speaking, a frost-free night to come. Now, Monday will be much brighter compared to on Sunday. There'll be some sunny spells for many parts of the UK, perhaps some longer spells of rain for parts of Scotland for a time. And there will be a scattering of showers elsewhere, but primarily in the north and the west, and actually some areas, mainly in the east, will stay largely dry. It will start to turn a little bit cloudy in the south later in the day, but temperatures are 13 or 14 degrees, so once again, very mild.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Joining me now is the Chair of UK Hospitality, Kate Nichols. Kate, lovely to see you.
Good morning.
I'm increasingly getting the impression that the hospitality industry and indeed the high street is being clobbered by this budget. And I'll tell you why I say that. I was out at the pub on Friday night and I was speaking to the landlord there, and he was saying that the rateable value issue, that the business rates issue wasn't too bad for him, but that he had a friend who was running a pub in London, and no word of a lie, he said that the rateable value of that person's pub has gone from £21,000 to £160,000. So break it down for us, because we're hearing from the Chancellor that she's doing great things for the hospitality sector and that actually business rates are fairer now than they were. I don't think that's the reality on the ground, but explain what's gone on.
Well, the reality on the ground, that example that you've given is far too common. Since the budget, I've had hundreds of phone calls from businesses that are facing similar levels of increase in their rateable values, but more importantly in their bills. And it is fiendishly difficult. And the Chancellor has worked with us to try and put in place a permanent solution, but unfortunately the way that they've gone about it hasn't delivered that. And I don't think ministers have fully understood the real impact of those soaring rateable values. So it's complicated.
Yes.
Your rates bill is built up of two factors. One, like council tax, your property is valued every 3 years, and it's a hypothetical assessment for pubs and hotels, and it's based on turnover. They are unique in being assessed in that way. The second is a tax rate, and what you're seeing in cases like that is the valuation is smoke and mirrors, not based in reality, is going very high. And when you couple it with the tax rate, you've got a bill that is soaring. So the average pub seeing a 76% increase in their business rates bills, that's an extra £13,000 that pub will have to find to be able to stand still. 10,000 extra pints of beer they'll have to sell. For a hotel, the average increase 115% in their tax bill. And that's after you've seen all of the government's support. So despite everything that the government has tried to do, I think they have misunderstood the situation badly, and you're seeing bills going up.
But is anyone listening? Because I speak to you, I speak to publicans, I speak to people trying to run businesses in this country, hospitality or otherwise, and they explain how dire the situation. So often you speak to somebody and say, well, the bill was X last year and now it's Y. And you have to go, well, how are you coping with that? How do you absorb that cost? Now, prices go up in pubs and hotels and restaurants inevitably, and we've all noticed that in our pockets. And who can blame them? Because they've got to make up for this shortfall somehow. But what's been the worst? If you look at both budgets, what's really affected businesses the worst, so to speak?
Well, I think you're right. It is the cumulative impact of both of those budgets. In 2 successive years, you've had above-inflation increases in wages, you've had above-inflation increases in business rates, and then you've had changes to the tax, the way that tax is calculated. The halving of the threshold on national insurance, that cost our sector £1.4 billion last year. Total tax bill in last year's budget in April of £3.4 billion. This year, it's £2.2 billion. So that's just not sustainable. You cannot balance the nation's books on the backs of the small businesses in hospitality that the government says should be providing jobs and growth in our local communities. So you're having to see jobs lost, 100,000 fewer jobs in the sector, half of those 18 to 24-year-olds. You're seeing prices go up, and that means that inflation stays higher for longer for all of us, so it's bad news for all of us. And you're seeing 2 sites a day close. So economically, socially, culturally, and from a community perspective, this does not make sense. sense.
And yet I had Pat McFadden, the Work and Pension Secretary, on earlier saying, no, putting up the minimum wage is a good thing to do. It's going to help when it comes to youngsters who are not in education or employment get back onto the employment ladder. But the evidence does suggest that actually the contrary might be true. We've got youth unemployment having gone up under Labour by about 1%. We've also got a situation, the Centre for Policy Studies, I mentioned this earlier, has calculated that it now costs an employer an extra $4,000 to employ someone 18 to 20. What are you seeing on the ground? Is the minimum wage increase actually putting people off hiring younger people?
Well, I think what it's doing is adding to this toxic cocktail of costs that the businesses are having to maintain. We would all love to pay fair wages. We all want to be able to provide full employment. But you have to, as a business, be able to cover the costs of doing business before you can create jobs. And at the moment, that virtuous circle is just going backwards. We're not able to afford to employ people. A third of our hospitality businesses saying they're having to close and not open full hours. 2/3 of them saying they're having to cut staff headcount, because they cannot afford to employ people. You can only pay fair wages if you can afford to employ people. That's not just the minimum wage, that's the cost of doing business. And these business rate increases, frankly, the announcement today, it's very welcome of the work experience money, but that money would be better spent in reducing the tax bill and reducing business rates for our hospitality sector so that they can employ people on their own grounds.
Tell me about pub closures. Again, we hear lots of different figures. We appreciate how difficult it is out there for publicans. How many pubs are closing at the moment?
Well, you're seeing one pub closing a day, and across hospitality, you're now up to 3 sites closing a day. So it's not just our pubs that are suffering, but obviously they are local community businesses. They provide local employment, and they have a local supply chain behind them. So culturally and socially, they are important. But that closure rate is also fuelled by the fact that bigger companies cannot afford to invest as a result of these successive tax increases. So for every closure that's happening, you're not seeing openings. And if we get back into having that positive bank balance, a healthy bank balance, we can go back out and create that jobs and investment. But everything that the government is doing is taxing us away from being able to do jobs growth and investment. So the closure rate, I think, will accelerate. The job losses will accelerate as a direct result of this budget and the business rates.
And yet, I heard from Mr McFadden earlier that we have in Rachel Reeves a, quote, excellent Chancellor. What's your response to that?
Well, I've worked with Rachel Reeves over the last couple of years and in opposition, and we have worked to try and put in place some good policies that will make the business environment better and the macroeconomic environment better. I think those policies, when they are implemented, there's a misleading and there's a misunderstanding of the nature of doing business and the costs of doing business. So I don't think there's a full understanding yet of the consequences of some of these decisions and the cumulative impact of tax and regulation. So we need ministers like Pat McFadden, Rachel Reeves, Peter Kyle leaning in and making sure that we have a supportive regulatory and fiscal environment in which our hospitality sector can thrive. And when it does, it delivers jobs, growth and investment. But at the moment, the government's policy is directed at the 8 in industrial strategy sectors, the high manufacturing. But 80% of employment is outside of those sectors. And in areas like coastal communities and rural communities, it's tourism and hospitality that is more valuable. They need to look at a dedicated strategy for the high street to be able to support our businesses.
Do you think that there's a disconnect between members of the Cabinet and the business world? I mean, it's often been stated that a lot of people running the country have never actually run their own business. Is there just a lack of understanding of how hard it is right now, particularly for SMEs?
Undoubtedly, that's the case. Unless you've run an SME, unless you've been in business and started it yourself, I don't think you realise the sleepless nights that you have when you're trying to balance the books and trying to look ahead. And I think there's also a misunderstanding at a civil service level of the profit margins that businesses are facing. Businesses in our sector have seen their profit margins halved since COVID as a direct result of all the taxes and costs. So the room for manoeuvre when you're operating on profit margins of 3% is non-existent. Any slight change in the tax base and you are going to push businesses out of business. And government needs to work more closely with businesses in hospitality, retail, the everyday economy. They need to understand understand the everyday economy, because that's where 80% of the employment comes and 50% of the economic value comes. But at the moment, they're not talking to that sector sufficiently to understand the impact of decisions they are taking.
Kate Nichols, you've been so clear in what you're saying. That's the killer stat, isn't it? Profit margins have halved since COVID. Absorb that as the government continues to insist it is a government of both workers and businesses. Thank you very much indeed for joining me this morning. Coming up next, I'm going to be speaking to former Conservative MP Bob Seeley, who joins me to talk about his new book, The New Total War. We're going to be discussing the meeting that Zelensky is about to embark on with the Prime Minister tomorrow. This is the Camilla Tominey Show, only on GB News.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there. It's still pretty unsettled in the eastern Mediterranean over the next few days. There will be some heavy showers and thunderstorms around too. But across Iberia and actually most of the Canary Islands and Madeira, it's largely fine, and there'll be plenty of sunshine on Monday. Just a few showers for northwestern parts of Spain and Portugal. Sunny for most of Italy too, but we run into more in the way of showers and stronger winds pushing down across parts of Greece and into Turkey. But overall, over the next few days, there's lots of sunshine to be enjoyed, and it will feel fairly warm.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
Only on GB News.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
First of all, are you coffee or tea?
Both. Both.
Okay.
Both, yeah.
If you're having tea, is it herbal tea or is it normal tea? I say normal tea.
Real tea.
Real tea. And is it milk or no milk?
Obviously milk.
Obviously milk. Final question before I read the piece. Milk in first or last?
Second.
Yeah, second.
Afterwards, if you've got a bag, but obviously if you're brewing it yourself, then you want to actually just check that it's brewed
I'm
properly.
from Wrexham. We just put the milk in, tea bag in the mug.
What?
Pour it in, and that's it. What's wrong with that?
And at this point, we stop talking.
It doesn't
brew properly.
Well, why doesn't it brew properly?
It stops the brewing.
You know exactly the right colour to bring it out, and you put it's a builder's tea.
Dad
says. Well, anyway, the average tea drinker has 62,000 cuppers in a lifetime, costing £6,222. I'd argue that isn't correct, because it's £4 for just a cappuccino, isn't it? Certainly in London now, at least £4. Most of the money is spent on milk, averaging 6 pence a cup. Again, tea bags cost around 4 pence each, and electricity to boil the kettle comes to 2 pence per day. And one of the top tips is only put the amount of hot water that you need to boil in, because that saves you money on your electricity.
But 62,000 cups in a lifetime, they've not met my mother.
Well, she's 162.
Honestly, it's every opportunity.
Is it? I think that's nice.
Exactly.
If I'm left to my own devices, I'd have a good 3 cups a day.
Yeah.
Of tea per hour?
In the morning, I'd have maybe 5 cups of coffee.
Do you get jittery?
Yes.
Do you? See, I know. I'm
What
at the point. No, never. I'm trying to do my 1 meal a day OMAD.
Yeah.
So I have coffees all the time, you know, and I don't get jittery. I don't think.
GB News, the People's Channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back. With me now is former Conservative MP Bob Seeley, who's got a new book out called The New Total War. Bob, lovely to see you. What's it about?
It's about the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Yeah.
And I tell the story of
the war through the eyes of Ukrainians, but I also tell the story of a type of war that is going to become increasingly prevalent in this century. And that's when authoritarian states, so Russia, so China, Iran, use all the tools of state power in a highly malign, aggressive way. So it's a form of intense Cold War or low-level non-military conflict. So Putin is uniting military and non-military tools in forms of conflict to try to undermine the West, to break the cohesion of Ukraine. But he's not the only one that's doing this. The Chinese and the Iranians will be doing it as well.
This is scary stuff, because I think we look at the war in Ukraine and we're perhaps in 2025 surprised that it does seem to resemble in parts the First World War and the Second World War. And we didn't think wars were going to be fought like this anymore, Bob, because of technology and all the rest of it. So just explain that a bit more, because we've seen a ground war. We've seen literally troops on the ground covered in mud trying to fight back the enemy and keep territory.
For sure.
But what are you adding into that mix now?
OK. If you look at Russian theories of war, Russian ideas of war, you can see that this war started in 2005 with Putin using primarily non-military tools of war, so political corruption, the power of oligarchs, the power of using energy prices as a tool of manipulation, assassination.
Up world leaders, going to the Olympics.
Yeah, corrupt. Well, I mean, you could say that he's got his fingers all over Witkoff and the US negotiating team now. He's got his hands all over the Hungarian government, all over the Slovakian government. So he's using the tools of his old craft in the KGB, the FSB, the Russian secret agencies and services. Excuse me, he's using that and he's combining that with military tools as well into a new form of total war. But he's not going to be the only person doing this, because increasingly China is going to be doing it in Taiwan and elsewhere, and using their economic power to create dependency in our own country, for example.
When you say he's got his hands all over Witkoff, who is obviously heavily involved, along with Jared Kushner, in trying to negotiate this peace deal, 28 points, with Trump, and Zelensky's meeting with the Prime Minister tomorrow. Friedrich Merz is going to be there, Emmanuel Macron, to try and put together that coalition of the willing response. So what do you see this 28-point plan being? A complete capitulation? There has to be a negotiation, right?
There has to, but the Russians have to want to stop. This war stops when the Russians stop invading another country, not before. And the problem is, I think for me, I think this looks like a very, very careful and very well-crafted influence operation, where effectively you try to co-opt some of your adversaries' negotiations, in this case Steve Witkoff. You try to divide Europe from the United States. You try to divide Europe from itself. You try to wear down political support for Ukraine. At the moment, the Russians have a three-pronged strategy to win this war. They're going to try to make progress, grinding slow progress on the battlefield, which is very slow, but is there. Secondly, they're trying to destroy Ukrainian morale by destroying electricity and energy supplies, so Ukrainians effectively freeze this winter. And thirdly, they're trying to destroy the umbilical cord, that cord of support that links Ukraine to its Western backers. And Putin believes that if he can get the US to walk away by, manipulating the various sort of players in this game.
But are they? I mean, Trump doesn't seem... The kind of pro-Trump narrative would be that it's just sick of the bloodshed. You could argue, actually, he didn't need any help from Putin. He already was making the point about defence spending in Europe and making sure there was a clear Atlantic Ocean, frankly, between the US's approach to war and the EU's and Britain's. But surely he wants a deal. This could just be the first offer. We're often told about him, the art of the deal. Or do you think he's actively being manipulated individually by Putin?
I mean, look, I've got friends in the Ukrainian armed forces who've died, and I've got friends who are still serving. I would love to see this war stop. Because it is dangerous for us that it continues. I think the argument is there is one thing worse than not supporting the Ukrainians to fight the Russians to a standstill, and that is letting them lose. Because if we let the Ukrainians lose, or if we don't give them that support that can keep them in the game, or at least get a better negotiated settlement, we're going to be having to deal with Putin in the Baltic republics in 2 or 3 years' time. And that is going to be potentially far more costly. There's a wider picture here, Camilla. The more that the international system is breaking down, the more dangerous it becomes for countries with very low defence spending like the UK. If we become increasingly isolated, separated from the United States, or separated if NATO's Article 5 no longer has credibility, the collective defence, in order for us to have a voice in international affairs, we're going to have to be spending a great deal more on hard power.
Yes.
So we don't have a happy choice and a bad choice. Let's just walk away from Ukraine and pretend it doesn't happen. That's not really a choice. What we've got is a series of increasingly painful choices. And really, we have to take defence and foreign policy much, much more seriously because we're living in a much more dangerous world. And that's one of the things that I argue there, and that we've got to get these choices right.
Bob, we've got 45 seconds left before I go to Michael Portillo. Just take us in the minds of Zelensky right now. What's he thinking and what's he likely to do this week?
Zelensky is hugging the Americans harder than the Russians because it has to be the Russians that walk away from this peace deal and not the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians do not think this is going to go anywhere, but they can't say that publicly. It has to be the Russians who walk away and continue the war.
And can Starmer help him?
Starmer the UK has influence in the US, yes.
All right, Bob Seeley, thank you very much indeed. As I say, your new book, The New Total War, is out now. Thank you very much. Let's just get the results of our You Decide poll for today. Would you trust the Tories to crack down on welfare more than Labour? Good news for Kemi Badenoch and Bob's old party. 70% of you say yes and 30% of you say no. Don't forget you can vote in all of our polls by becoming a friend of GB News for free. Scan the QR code now. Coming up next, of course, is Michael Portillo with his show at 11. Michael, what are you cooking up?
No cooking today, Camilla. I've got a review of Paddington the musical. I wonder whether it's marmalade or marmite. We've got an interview with the graffiti artist Endless, who's done a new mural featuring Luke Evans, and the Rosetta Stone that enabled us to decipher hieroglyphs. It's in the British Museum. Should it go back to Egypt? That's a question we're asking today.
Very good too. On the subject of Paddington, very briefly, Michael, have you taken a train to Peru, just out of interest?
No trains in Peru yet. Looking forward to it, though. There's a wonderful train up to Machu Picchu. When I tried to take it a few years ago, it was on strike. I'd like to try it again.
All right, great. If you need a travelling companion, Michael, I'll happily go with you by train to Machu Picchu. But it sounds very good, that Paddington show, so looking forward to hearing all about that at 11. As ever, I'm going to be back at the same time next week, 9:30, with more punchy political banter and discussion. Stay tuned for Michael now. He's coming up just after the weather. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and I'll see you again next week. Thank you.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, this is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. Do have those raincoats on hand if you do plan on stepping outside today. Low pressure is increasingly in charge once again, and it's pushing weather fronts northeastwards across the UK as we head throughout the day. These have already been providing some outbreaks of rain, generally fairly light and intermittent across parts of England and Wales. The heaviest pulses are likely to be for Northern Ireland initially, and those eventually spreading into central and southern Scotland. There is a rain warning in force today for Northern Ireland, so some minor disruption is possible and quite difficult travelling conditions around at times. As that rain band continues to sweep across mainland Scotland, it's going to be a pretty soggy end to the day here. The Northern Isles managing to hold off until a little later on in the evening, but underneath that persistent cloud and rain, it is going to feel quite cool, if not locally chilly. But behind that, we are starting to filter in some slightly milder air, so where skies begin to brighten or clear up later on in the day, we could see highs around 13 to 14 degrees Celsius. It is, though, still going to be breezy across much of England and Wales, and that will temper the feel of things a touch. Our rain band then heading up towards Orkney and Shetlands later on this evening, but we've got another wave of showers that will push their way in from the west. These could be quite squally and heavy, but also bring some hail and thunderstorms as well. Quite a mild night overall, some areas staying up in double-digit figures. A little chillier where we see skies clear across northeastern Scotland, but that rain band will push its way northeastwards again into the start of Monday morning. There will be some sunnier spells around on Monday in general, particularly across parts of England and Wales, but those showers will continue out towards the north and the west, and the cloud will eventually push into central southern areas of England and Wales a little later on in the day. Temperatures around 8 to 14 degrees Celsius. Do be aware, though, that we will return to very wet and windy conditions Monday night into Tuesday with our next area of low pressure that arrives, and that could bring further disruption, so do stay up to date.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
This is your chance to become our biggest cash prize winner to date. £85,000 in totally tax-free cash could be making its way from our bank account to yours. It would be like having over £7,000 per month extra to play with each month for a whole year. That could be you, safe in the knowledge that 2026 is on us. For another chance to win £85,000 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a